People dream of starting a new life in the UK. They risk their lives to get here, and they don't all make it. But once they do, is it worth it?
When I got here, I was shocked because of the unfair treatment, because of the poor hygiene levels in this place, because of the way I was treated. I don't know if I deserve this treatment, but it's happening anyway.
When 3-year-old Alan Kurdi washed up on the beach last September, the photo made global headlines. And in the UK, people took to the streets to make demands on the government to do more to help. The government announced it would resettle 20,000 Syrian refugees before 2020. Some people say that's not enough, and others say it's too many.
They've not come here to steal benefits. In fact, that is not even part of their thinking. They just want to start new.
I went to meet some refugees to find out what they really think of the treatment they're receiving now they've reached England.
Fellow human beings deserve a roof over their heads and safe conditions to live in, and that's what the Home Office should be delivering, and that's what they're not currently delivering.
Hassan Akkad is 28 years old, and he's from Syria, Damascus.
In 2011-2012, when in the early years of the revolution, I protested peacefully, like thousands of other people, and I ended up in jail for protesting twice, where I received very bad treatment, humiliated, beaten up for protesting. I ended up leaving Syria in 2012 because I couldn't bear staying there anymore, because I didn't want to be in prison again.
I'm from Syria, Damascus. My name is Rais. The situation in our country is terrible. We cannot go back because of the war and because of the terrorists. You could get killed at any time by random bombings and shellings, or you could be kidnapped when you're walking down the street.
Lillian's story is slightly different.
My name is Lillian. I live in London. I've lived in London for the last 30 years, but I wasn't born here. I'm originally from Damascus, Syria. I was born there a long time ago. Maybe I shouldn't tell you my age. When you're a Jewish family in Syria, it's not as easy as it is everywhere else in the world. You've got a lot of things to deal with, anti-Semitism. You haven't got the freedom that everyone else has. So if you want to do certain things with your family, even simple things like going on holiday together, as a family, you couldn't do it. And my parents decided 30 years ago that they were not going to live with that anymore. They wanted us to have the freedom to be brought up as normal children.
Hassan told me he was nervous about doing the journey. He'd seen the news and knew how dangerous it could be. It took Hassan 87 days to get to England. Both him and Rais, in orange and red, went from Syria to Turkey to Europe. 30 years ago, at the age of 12, Lillian, in blue, travelled alone from Syria to Lebanon. Then she took a boat to Israel and flew to London, where she was reunited with her family. Hassan and Rais didn't do the journey together, but like many Syrians, they travelled over 4,000 kilometres, largely on foot. They met in Calais. They all remember their journeys vividly.
The most difficult bit of it was going on a dinghy from Turkey to Greece. It is the most difficult and the most dangerous one. The first time our crossing wasn't successful and we ended up sinking in the sea.
So we went on this boat, and it was a trip that's meant to take a few hours. It was a very small boat that was transporting vegetables from Cyprus to Israel. This is how I remember it being very old and very small, which is why it couldn't really take the weather that was facing us that night. It was really quite bad.
I spent 6 months in Calais in the jungle, which is a makeshift camp. I had to buy my own tent and set it up. The situation was terrible. It was very cold. We were provided with 1 meal a day from a charity. We hardly got any help.
In Calais, I tried, I think, every single method to get here. I tried the trucks, I tried the Eurostar, but I wasn't successful. I would always get caught by border control. And then I got over using a fake passport. And Once I arrived here, I immediately claimed asylum, and I'm in the middle of my asylum process and asylum claim right now.
The next station shortly, Didcot Parkway.
If they make it to the UK, the travelling doesn't stop there. Hassan got to England before Reis. When Reis did finally make it here, the Home Office moved him to Wales.
He's staying at this hostel in Cardiff. Very excited to see him. When refugees are after the UK, they don't get to choose where they can stay. They are sent to so many different cities around the UK. Cardiff, Liverpool, Birmingham, Manchester. No one gets sent to London.
Asylum seekers and refugees are similar, but technically they're not the same. People arrive in the UK as asylum seekers and want to become refugees. It's the Home Office's job to deal with all asylum claims, and it can take around 6 months for these claims to be processed. Whilst they wait for refugee status, asylum seekers are entitled to £36.95 each per week, free healthcare on the NHS, and accommodation. But the benefits stop once you've been granted refugee status. Accommodation was a serious issue for Reis. He had to live in a house which has received a lot of criticism.
It's supposed to hold about 120 people, my understanding, from the Clear Springs local management. And when I visited there towards the end of 2015, I was told that there were 397 people living in the accommodation at that particular time. And in fact, the local management described the situation as a crisis. They simply weren't able to cope with the number of people that the Home Office was sending through.
So I'm standing outside Link's house now, although you probably wouldn't know because the big sign behind me that said Link's house a few months ago has been completely covered over since the media shed light on this accommodation. But from reports that we've heard, there's approximately 300 people living inside accommodation that should only house 100, 11 people living in rooms of 2, and we're going inside now to meet the refugees to find out more. Reis told me he didn't have high expectations. His first priority was safety. However, he does admit that when he first arrived at Link's house, he was shocked at the poor hygiene levels. He felt disappointed that he'd just have to sit there and wait, not knowing what his future would hold.
I don't know if I deserve this treatment, but it's happening anyway.
Although they do get somewhere to live, the asylum seekers I spoke to say they're finding it really hard to settle in. Some people were made to wear red wristbands.
In order to get food, people were having to wear a wristband. And you might say, well, what's the issue about that? But when you're dealing with a group of people who have fled their own country because they're under target and they are, people are looking out for them to identify them, actually wearing something that identifies you is a really huge issue for them. And there were reports of people receiving abuse when they were out on the streets because people could identify them as asylum seekers.
Eric lived in Link's house for 2.5 months.
When you are wearing the wristbands and you are coming down Newport Road, people will be honking their cars and telling you, foreigners, go home. And then it begs the question, okay, what is worse? Fleeing home from persecution or living in a place where no one loves you, no one knows your name? These guys, come on, this is their first experience of the society.
I've been trying to contact the Minister for Immigration, James Brokenshire, for 3 months. His team at the Home Office told me he would not be interested in doing an interview or making any comments. So then I tried Richard Harrington, the Minister for Syrian Resettlement. He also declined an interview, but sent me this statement. We are committed to resettling vulnerable refugees directly from the region around Syria to ensure we target our help at those most in need. We have committed to resettling 20,000 Syrian refugees, and more than 1,000 have been resettled so far. Another serious issue alongside accommodation is language. Having been here for 30 years, Lillian's now fluent in English with a successful business in the heart of Hatton Garden.
But it was hard because when I was first at school, I didn't understand anything. I spoke French because that was taught to us from day one in Syria. So a lot of times I was communicating in school with my French teachers in a little bit of French. Some of them spoke a few words in Arabic. And, when you're trying to tell people who you are, what you've been through, it's very hard when you don't speak the language.
And for Reis, it's even more tricky as a middle-aged man. He's going to school 4 times a week to learn English, as without it, he doesn't feel he can fit into society.
Language matters. Language matters most. There need to be points of access to the community, like maybe sports clubs, engagement with other people, that helps. That kind of needs to be, it's not going to happen on its own, that needs to be sort of organised as a sort of forum, so, whether sport is one thing, maybe music.
Alongside accommodation and language, integration is key. The Migration Policy Institute say the process of integration is not just the responsibility of the refugee. Society also has a role to play.
That's my dad. I was obviously very close to him because we lived through a lot together.
Lillian was accepted and welcomed into the Jewish community, and this has allowed her to flourish.
When you're in a community where you've got someone introducing you in, sometimes a little bit easier than just coming and not knowing a single person, because people wouldn't really know what to expect from you.
And after recent terror attacks, it's become more difficult for Muslims.
I'm not in touch with the community. The only people I'm in touch with are the administrators of this place. I don't meet any Welsh people, only the other refugees that are staying here. Except for them, I hardly speak to anyone.
The backlash after every terrorist attack is always there. They tend to generalize and say that Muslims are terrorists. And for people to generalize and for people to blame 1.7 billion Muslims in my opinion, they're giving a favor to terrorists, because this is how they recruit their people.
And Professor Statham argues that the government should be doing more, as he believes they shape public perception on asylum seekers.
The public in all situations, they seem to think are just going to have a sort of racist response. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that it's possible, for example, to do unpopular things if you're a government and make a good case for them. And quite often people follow what you say. If Tony Blair is capable of invading Iraq against mass mobilised, the idea that they can't do anything about this is bogus, and the idea that it's nice of them to blame it on the media is also quite interesting.
This is the book I was telling you about.
Before I left Lillian, she showed me her family book they would use for their travels. Although it was a scary journey for a 12-year-old to do on her own, it has had a huge impact on who she is today.
I think when you live through something like that, you do appreciate what you have a lot more, but you also learn to be a lot more tough, and not many things can scare me, really. Because when you think of what happened, I think that's as bad as it can get. It does make you a lot stronger person and more determined to do what you want to do. And obviously that reflects in my business, in my everyday life. But even with my children, I do teach them to value what they have, because really when you look at things today, it's so easy here. Growing up here, I had nothing to worry about. Whenever we wanted, we could go away, we could do whatever we wanted.
And my final question, what would you say to the government given the chance?
People say open the borders. It's quite naive. You can't just open the borders and let everyone in. That's just not, for me, it's pretty naive to say so. But I would say that there are thousands of people still stuck in Calais. Their asylum claims should be processed. Maybe send Home Office officers to Calais, study their asylum claims. A lot of them are genuine refugees, genuine asylum seekers.
Nobody's asking for hotel-style accommodation. We're just saying people, fellow human beings deserve a roof over their heads and safe conditions to live in. And that's what the Home Office should be delivering, and that's what they're not currently delivering.
Asylum seekers and refugees are not commodities. They are not swarms. They are not floods of people. These are human beings. These are people who've escaped their homelands under grievous circumstances. These are people who are emotionally scarred. These are people who are ready to sacrifice everything and anything to create a new and a safe abode. So instead of chastising them and naming them names and removing them from one refugee community organization to the next, these people should be given a structured life. They've not come here to steal benefits. In fact, that is not even part of their thinking. They just want to start new.